Życzymy Państwu przyjemnej podróży.
Good afternoon and welcome to our discussion on the topic Populism, Polarization, Violence, the future of Slovak democracy. My name is Barbora Krempaská and I am the project manager of the Friedrich Naumann Foundation's Office for Central Europe based in Prague. And I also come from Slovakia, so it's a great honor for me to host and moderate this session today. Joining me are esteemed guests and experts, each bringing their own unique position to this table. First, by my side, I welcome Łukasz Grzesiczak, a Polish journalist, fact-checker at Demagog, and also Slovakist, who published even a book about Slovakia called Slovakia, Apache, Cosmos, and Halušky. I would very much like to read this book with this interesting title. Then we have Zora Jaurová, vice chairwoman of the Liberal Party Progressive Slovakia, also member of the Slovak parliament and expert on cultural policy. Welcome to Zuzana Kovačič Hanzelová, renowned Slovak journalist at the daily SME, a leading Slovak independent newspaper and online platform, and moderator with her own talk shows featuring key political figures in the country. And last but not least, Mr. Michal Vašečka, a renowned Slovak sociologist, political commentator, also university professor and director of the Bratislava Policy Institute. Slovakia, as you know, like many countries across Europe, is facing an intensifying challenge of political polarization, populism, and a disturbing rise in violence, including assassinations attempts. You know, we had two crucial elections last year. One was here in Poland with a very positive, successful results. Whereas in Slovakia, let's say we Slovaks can only envy you. Prime Minister Fico has managed to take control of almost all important institutions in the country only in 1 year. Slovakia has changed beyond recognition at such a speed that even Kaczynski and Orbán, who is Fico's loyal ally and role model, could envy Fico. So, as Slovak democracy seems to be under increasing pressure, tonight we hope to discuss and explore how Slovakia reached this point, and more importantly, what can be done to prevent further erosion of democratic values and social cohesion. So, I would maybe start with our political representative today, Zora. As a member of the Slovak parliament, you are experiencing or witnessing firsthand the increasing tensions in Slovakia. So how has Slovakia changed during this year of Robert Fico's fourth government? What is like to be a liberal in Slovakia, especially a liberal politician from the biggest opposition party?
So, hello, good afternoon. First of all, I was thinking about how to position myself in this debate because Apart from Łukasz, I know very well all the other people here, and Michal, he is known as the priest of apocalypsa in Slovakia and apocalyptic doom. While Zuzana, as a bright analyst, journalist, she, at least to me, always tries to see also the light at the end of the tunnel. So I decided I can oscillate between the two, and since I am now the politician, I can sometimes switch from analytical to more political speaking. I don't mean necessary bullshitting, but maybe more emotional and motivational speaking. Anyway, back to your question. When I was thinking about one word which would describe 1 year of Ford Fico's government, I think the word would be sad, or triste in French, because to me it's very sad what has Fico become in his fourth cycle. I am following his political career since he is in the politics, and even though I was always on the, let's say, other side of opinion or value spectrum than he was, it was very clear for several years that he was a talented and successful politician, once admired by many of his European colleagues because he was like a shining star of social democratic parties in Europe. You don't see that much of it anymore. And it's not caused only by the fact that, okay, he survived the attempt to assassinate. It's more that it's very clear that his fourth cycle is a downhill ride. And it's very clear that he has no political ambitions anymore, apart from his personal freedom and his personal well-being, which is caused by the corruption investigation, which was started during the previous government. And it could, of course, lead to him, and probably we will talk about it later. To me, what is the saddest part of it is that, you know, we can argue that he was never a real social democrat, but at least for some years he was trying to follow this value set of social democracy. Now, in order to, you know, to be politically successful, he has to collect votes from far right, from conspirational scene in Slovakia, this disinformation scene. He has to collect anti-democratic votes. He has to collect pro-Russian part of the population. And that leads to, first, the international isolation, especially the pro-Russian sentiment he is steering very deliberately. But also, it's the cause of like rapidly increasing harsh political language, vulgarity in the politics, but also denial of the facts and truth in the mainstream political narrative. It's not anymore the margin, it's the mainstream political narrative. Like, we have a Minister of Culture who was a star moderator of the conspirational online media. She was preaching against the vaccination. She was spreading all kind of fake news. She is now the Minister of Culture. Her colleague who did these shows with her is now the plenipotentiary for investigating the pandemics, and recently he declared there was no pandemics. It was a complot against the humankind. And it's not some lunatic from the extreme part of the society, is a governmental plenipotentiary. So this is the set phase of Fico's fourth government. And then, of course, I mean, the result of it are some anti-democratic tendencies. We will talk about it later, against media, against the civic society. But also, I think, and that's for me the most dangerous part of it, it's the steep decline of already shattered institutional foundation of the state. And this is something which has started during the previous government, during the Matović's government. And I think in order to understand present Fico, we have to understand the previous Matović, because that's the cause of what's going on now, and that's probably something we will come back to. So, okay, that was the doom part. That was the inner Michal in me. I have also some nicest part of it, because you asked me about how does it feel to be liberal in Slovakia, or progressive, or whatever. It feels strange, because our political opponent made the word progressive into a swear word. They don't know what it means, but they would use it for anything which is bad. However, I have to tell you also the good news that progressive Slovakia is actually the most successful liberal party in Europe. There is no other liberal. We got 18% in the last elections. Now we are polling about 20%. There is no other liberal progressive party in Europe with this kind of result. And I think that's very interesting moment. There is a complex set of reasons for that. I'll come back to that later in the debate. But that's also a good news, and so that's the inner Zuzana in me and the light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly, but liberals still remain one of the biggest enemies for Fico. I would say then the second one are the media, right? And we have a renowned representative here, Zuzana. How do you perceive these developments? What is like to be a journalist in Slovakia? I mean, you also have personal experience with the suppression of objective reporting in our country, and also political oppression towards the outlets you have worked in or you are working in, and towards your person too. Can you share your insights, feelings?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, I have to say that the dark picture you said in the beginning, I don't see that much dark, I have to say. I mean, although in Poland there were elections that you consider to be successful, I mean, Poland has been through a lot, we have to say. I mean, I don't have to tell you this.
Of course.
And I don't think that we are in that bad condition as you've described yet. We'll see what will happen. For instance, I mean, I'm in my late pregnancy, and it's not really safe in this country for me, because if anything happens with my baby, I would probably die in the hospital according to the law. So just to be the light at the tunnel, it's not a it's not a pleasant thing to be a journalist, and I have to stress that my husband is a journalist as well, and it's another thing to be a female journalist in Slovakia. So that's an addition to how bad it is, because you know the slut shaming and hatred is much worse for women journalists. So that's probably my first point. I mean, we know Robert Fico for many years. I've been a journalist since I was 20 years old, so it's like 16 years now. So most of my career, Mr. Fico was in power. And he never liked us, we have to say. I mean, we were never in favor of Robert Fico. So this is This is not a new thing, but what is new is what Mrs. Zora Jaurová described, that it became a mainstream to be aggressive, and the aggression is really bad. And although Prime Minister in some points of his career attacked us, it's on daily basis now. And what we can see that the government is not communicating with the mainstream media, standard media, let's say. And their channels, how to communicate, are exclusively disinformation media now. So it's impossible for us to get interview with any member of the government, prime minister, president as well. So it's getting harder and harder to do our job. That's the main difference from his previous government, because, you know, he used to do the interviews when he was third-time prime minister. Now he's not doing any interviews at all, I have to say, apart from the public TV, which is not public anymore. So it's becoming harder and harder, but I have to say we still do have a lot of free newspaper, free outlets, and I mean, although the picture is not looking very good right now with TV news, I mean, still we can say that we have free media, and apart from the public TV that was destroyed recently, we are still in quite good shape, I have to say.
Great, thank you very much for your positive words. And now we are turning to the page. Michal, Slovakia is probably one of the most polarized countries now. Maybe I would state even most polarized in Europe. Do you agree? How did we reach this point? And what is the biggest problem of the Slovaks? Are we specific in something, or is this pattern of behavior recognizable in other countries in Europe?
Dziękuję za pytanie. Chwilę nie wiedziałem, w którym języku odpowiadać.
Thank you for the question. I didn't know which language to answer, but I decided not to hurt you with my Polish, and due to the respect of my colleagues from Slovakia, I'll speak English.
Very simple. And sorry, I don't know. Is it? Okay. Slovakia is, of course, it's a polarized country, but sitting in Poland, that's nothing new, nothing surprising. In case of Slovakia, it's slightly more complicated, because that's not a political polarization. I would say it's much deeper civilization, cultural polarization. Slovakia is a work in progress. Slovakia is a country without elementary consensus about its identity, its historical development, important figures in a history. I would even can go as far as to claim that it's a typical problem of a country that in 19th century would be named as ahistorical nation in comparison to historical nations in Central Europe, Czechs, Poles, Hungarians. So all the sicknesses that were described at that time are fitting very much. Of course, the polarization is more complex because Slovakia is on the edge of basically three worlds: Western Europe, Eastern Europe, and also Balkans. And it has all three flavors in one. In Poland, and consequently, significant part of Slovak population is anti-Western, not anti-Union, as you can see and observe in Poland, but anti-Western. In fact, Slovakia is the most anti-Western country of Central and Eastern Europe out of those countries that are part of the European Union. Slovakia, of course, has a very deep cleavage, rural-urban, and you would say, okay, what's so surprising? We have it in Poland as well. But in case of Slovakia, be careful. Upper Hungary, today Slovakia, didn't really have an urban environment. When Czechoslovakia was established in 1918, Bratislava had 120,000 people, Košice 40,000. It was basically a rural country where, and even on top of it, most of people living in cities were mostly German, Jewish, Hungarian, later Czechs, not so much Slovak. So Slovaks were coming from rural areas, and we already in 20th century suddenly saw, and I would even say Czechs who came after 1918, basically observed that Slovakia is a country where some parts of population didn't come through the process of enlightenment. and the Enlightenment was coming relatively lately. Country, consequently, is a deeply rural, even today rural by heart, is deeply anti-intellectual, anti-elitist, and on top of it, anti-expert. And I can continue. This is the doom part, and it's probably not that apocalyptic as many are saying. I'm coming with, these are not my feelings, but I'm coming with data from various surveys that are proving it. Slovakia is, as I said, the most anti-Western, deeply anti-European as well, but not as much as the neighboring Czech Republic. It's the most anti-American out of all countries of Central and Eastern Europe. It's most pro-Russian. It's most pro-Putin. It has a very strong authoritarian sentiment. So, for your understanding, more than 50% systematically and significantly in last more than 30 years are claiming that they would prefer to have authoritarian ruler that would rule without parliament, civil society, basically alone. The country is also deeply anomic. So, with polarization, just not to speak too much, country is deeply divided since 19th century, since the beginning of Slovak emancipation, and we saw it. So it's not a new phenomenon. We saw it already during the so-called First Czechoslovak Republic. We saw it during the Slovak fascist state. Even the Slovak uprising against fascism in '44 was basically a reflection of that polarization on one side, and it was slightly different in comparison to Poland. On one side, communists and Democrats, on the other side, clerical forces and fascists. Basically the same story as you were observing in Spain that time. So, not to speak too much, to conclude, so many would say that you are recognizing those patterns of behavior of people who are living in a polarized society. In case of Slovakia, I would say it was also fed by two facts, the much deeper polarization. Firstly, unlike in Poland, Slovakia became the battlefield for various social media who were testing some of their products. Again, I'm not speaking feelings. You can observe the work of various NGOs and academic institutions who were showing how Meta were actually starting testing in Philippines, in Asia, in Slovakia, in Europe, various products. And the result of it is completely not only polarized, but politicized public sphere. On top of it, Russia was utilizing Slovakia as a main target in the European Union. I mean, and honestly speaking, if I would sit in Kremlin, I would do the same. You are always targeting the weakest part of the chain, and Slovakia is clearly the weakest part of the chain of what we call the global West. Russia invested a lot of money. There are various calculations that it's basically per capita the second place after Ukraine. So of course polarization was there since 19th century, but at the same time it's also artificially fed, and the result is almost neo-Orwellian world, which is deeply full of conspiration. Slovak index of conspiracy thinking is the highest in the region. Basically more than 50% of people you can name as conspiratory. And so suddenly you are living in a world where social dynamics changed. The words changed its meaning, so good becomes bad, white becomes black, occupier is liberator, and that's basically the environment where such MPs as Mrs. Jaurová are operating, and it's difficult actually, to bring something new, something innovative in a world where the other part of the society actually is not decoding your words properly.
If I may add on this, on top of this, I mean, most of the smear campaigns against myself or other journalists come from personas that probably do have money and financing from Russia. I mean, I was targeted by a neo-Nazi persona, and he clearly has some funding from very suspicious sources. I mean, we suspect that he might have some money from the governing party, Smer, but also from Kremlin as well. And he's targeting me for more than 2 years personally. But you can see other, disinfo media that it was already proven that they got money from Russia, and part of it is smear campaign against journalists, trusted institution against the president, former President Čaputová, or Progressive Slovakia or others, and the smear campaign is clearly funded from Russia. Yeah.
So the only difference between Poland and Slovakia in this respect is that Polish soil is not well prepared for receiving Russian propaganda. Slovak soil is very well prepared, and of course it's fructifying. Yeah,
and we will come to this topic later, but let me first turn to our Polish speaker and ask how the Polish people are viewing or feeling about the developments in Slovakia. How do you assess it? Do you think it is a specific phenomenon, what is going on in Slovakia, or does it remind you somehow on the situation in 2015 when peace was gradually taking over Poland?
Mnie się wydaje, co do tego pierwszego pytania, o te jak...
As to the first question on how Polish media see Slovakia,
że tej Słowacji paradoksalnie jest bardzo dużo obecnie w polskich mediach.
It seems to me that Slovakia is quite present in the Polish media.
Problemem polskich mediów, które
But this has to do with the eternal problem of Polish media, which are not really interested in foreign affairs. If they do, they are trying to explain what's going on in Poland. So liberal media have to write that Fico is like Kaczyński and hence warn their electorate against Kaczyński coming back to power. And then we have some circles which are not liberal, who support PiS, the Law and Justice Party. So now they will emphasize certain polls which say that in Slovakia you don't have a lot of inequalities. So they are trying to emphasize the positive phenomena in Slovakia. But when we are writing about Slovakia, we are actually writing about Poland, but we are trying to describe Poland through this Slovakian mask. And you are experts on the politics in Slovakia. I'm just observing from afar. So we are looking from a distance. So from my Polish perspective, I would like to point out 4 things. I wrote them down and I'd like to share them with you. So these events do look similar to what happened in Poland in 2015, so taking over power, public media, the prosecutor's office, and so on. So we can say that Fico is following in the footsteps of the previous Polish government. So attacks on journalists, not letting mainstream journalists into certain events. So this is what we've seen here in Poland. There are many similarities. But we've had this for 8 years, whereas Slovakia is just at the beginning of this process. So here I'd like to say 4 things. So when I read the liberal media, also when I talk to my friends from Slovakia, so they say that this has been normalized and that this is the end of democracy. It seems to me that normalization was a very very bad time in the history of Czechoslovakia when historians and writers couldn't work in their professions. They had to do physical jobs or they had to work in beer production, for example. So I would say that these statements are exaggerated. And the Polish experience tells us that if at the beginning we already say that's the end of democracy, then we know that it's going to get worse, and then we'll run out of words to use to describe this. This has been the experience in Poland and in Hungary under Orban. So we keep on discussing Fico, his path, the transformation of the society in Slovakia, and this is only natural. But I think that the Polish example showed that the only way to get rid of authoritarians is to beat them in the elections, to get more votes than they do. And I guess the right question is, why did they win? Why did Fico come back to power? So also when in Poland the situation was so bad, I interviewed Michal, who is the head of this right social movement, a pro-democratic movement in the Czech Republic, and their Fiala already won. And I asked him what to do to have similar changes in Poland. And he said, just keep on doing your job. And I thought that makes no sense. That irritated me. But then I realized that's all we can do. Just do our job and try to convince people to vote for Democrats. And what I really liked that when we had protests in the Czech Republic, they would invite farmers from some distant regions, and they were trying to explain to the elite the problems of the farmers in the Czech Republic who live somewhere far away. So they were trying to understand the other side instead of criticizing them and undermining them. And another point is about leadership. The MP said that progressive Slovakia is so popular that it does not resort to populism, unlike many other European countries, which is great, but you're getting 20%, as you said. So if you look at leadership, the head of the party, Michal is basically representing everything that the other side hates. And of course, I'm oversimplifying. So he's a member of the Oxford elites, he's the deputy president of the European Parliament, and some people do not like this pro-European elite. And his father was a journalist, whereas Fico is fighting with journalists. His mother was establishing the Amnesty Institution, whereas Fico is now fighting against NGOs because they are all founded by Soros, as we all know. Then we have Havel, which also represents the elites from Prague. And his partner is a dancer, actually. So I'm wondering, in this context, and I think that if we have polarization, that is to Fico's advantage.
No to jest też pani poseł mówiła o tym, że nie da się zrozumieć tego, co się dzieje z Ficem.
That we cannot understand what's going on with Fico if we do not think about what happened to Matovic.
Fico udało się zdobyć tych wyborców trochę dlatego, że
Fico convinced the voters,
zawiodła go ta druga
maybe
strona.
because they were disappointed by the other side.
Matowicz, szeroka koalicja.
Matowicz built a broad coalition. Progressive Slovakia was not in the parliament back then, but you had the president Chaputova, so maybe the voters chose Fico because they were not getting something when the Democrats were in power.
A więc mi się wydaje, że to są bardzo takie proste i może prowokacyjne sformułowania,
of course, these are simple, maybe provocative explanations, but maybe they will allow us to look at the problem from a different perspective.
Wygrał tak, że więcej.
This is a very important question you raised. Like, why Fico is back? And this is what I want to ask Michal. Are we a society that cannot learn from its own mistakes and history? I mean, we had a journalist killed, a gay couple killed, almost the prime minister killed. How far it will go? How to calm the situation in the country? And does anyone from the leadership even has interest in calming down the situation in Slovakia?
Well, fair point, and I agree that Slovakia is not really learning from its mistakes. And one of answers why is that slight majority of people don't consider those mistakes to be mistakes. And those are, and I'm returning to your point, which is absolutely fair, when we're asking what to do, how to change the situation. I'm following also public opinion polls in Poland, and I know the differences between Poland and Slovakia. Those who are appreciating the development after 1989 are still in majority in Poland. I mean, of course, they are polarized. They have very different opinions about developments to come, but they, generally speaking, appreciate developments after 1989. In Slovakia, it's 50-50. Those who are appreciating our membership in the European Union are only in very slight majority, 52 to 48. Those who appreciate liberties and human rights that came after 1989 are already in minority. Those who believe that Slovakia should be part of Western structures. I mean, if you ask about the European Union, that's something else. People are pragmatic. Slovakia is a small country. People are not idiotic. They know that they should stay in the European Union. But when you ask about Western structures, institutions, suddenly, again, we are already in minority. Big minority, but minority. Those who believe that this is the future of Slovakia. And that's a slight difference, So those who would like to run the country have two options. Either to do what you suggested, and by the way, Progressive Slovakia is doing it. I mean, I appreciate it. And they, exactly as it was said, they have over 20%, which is almost a miracle in countries such as Slovakia. Or they can, as some other parts of opposition, try to bring some of those people who are in fact anti-Western liberties to the camp, to the liberal conservative camp, and to convince them that this is a life which would be better than under the boots of Russian soldiers that might come. And those people very often are pro-Russian, but very often they are pro-Russian in a Slovak style, basically saying, when Russians will come, Poles will be killed, but we will be only raped. That's basically, the logic behind it. So let's be nice to Russians, of course, because we are afraid of them, but, once we will be nice, we will benefit from it. But the major statement, what went wrong in Slovakia, I mean, we don't have time for that, but I would suggest that the major problem is that Slovakia is still partly kidnapped state. I don't want to repeat mafia state, although a few years ago it was fair enough to mention that. Kidnapped state. Poland was never kidnapped state. I would compare Slovakia with its oligarchs and the power of those oligarchs much more to the situation of Ukraine a few years ago or Russia a few years ago than to our neighbors. So the question is whether Slovakia will be country in a coming future which will be changing progressive liberal forces that will be doing something positive, one step forward, and then others will come back and there will be 2 steps behind, back, or it will be basically failure state. And this is what we are discussing. We are not discussing whether Slovakia will be successful state. I mean, we want to secure that it will be not absolute failure. And the last sentence, I believe, and some segments of Slovak society started to discuss it these days, that we have to simply establish Slovakia again. I mean, symbolically. The first Slovak Republic was a puppet state of fascist Germany, Nazi Germany. It was absolute failure and disgusting state. And the second is failing, basically. And I'm saying it positively. Hey, Poles have Trzecia Rzeczpospolita. No, so Slovaks can have the third one as well. French have the fifth. So what's the problem here? Simply, as people like Masaryk were saying already in the 20s, countries are reproducing on principles based on which they were established. And Slovakia was established on a lie, on a missing referendum. Basically, it was established against the will of its inhabitants, and it's reproducing like that. So I would suggest that people like Mrs. Jaurová should come with the suggestions and the whole set of principles how to establish Slovakia again, and for the third time, and this time, I mean, for real.
We will come back to this later, because this is also in my paper to ask for solutions. But I would come back to the topic we already mentioned, and this is disinformation, because this is really what is polarizing the society, and the Slovak people are not able anymore to realize what is true, what is a disinformation, what is even a pro-Russian propaganda, conspiracy theory. Our government are selling us conspiracy theories as true, and it is very hard to fight against it. We have an expert on disinformation here. You are working with fact-checking, so I would like to ask, what are our principles or effective tools how to combat disinformation? And maybe if you can slightly compare the situation, why Slovaks are so vulnerable to the information and Polish people not, or as I think.
To jest... Ja do końca nie wiem. Po
pierwsze, I do not truly know. It is that
pracuję w Demagogu, zajmujemy się...
I work for Demagog. We deal with disinformation, so I'm a sort of a practitioner. I certainly know less about the Slovak society as the other panelists, so it's difficult for me to take a stance. Indeed, there is a report of 2020 named Globsec, and experts frequently refer to it when speaking about disinformation, and the data there reads that 56% of the surveyed Slovaks believed in disinformation. 51% of them believes that the world is governed by Jewish conspiracy, 52-51, that the Jews control the world. But generally, the same study, it was in 10 states of the region, 34% believes disinformation. Well, it's less, but still, 38% of Poles believes that the Jews control the world. The rest is Jewish conspiracy. Of course, the numbers are more optimistic, but as the saying goes, such difference does not delight me. So, I believe we have the same issue in Poland. The Slovak problem, as you said, is an imminent element of the political system of Fico's power, and we could speak about pro-Russian tendencies. According to that research, Ukrainians are Slovaks are far more pro-Russians. In Poland, we more or less agree about Russia, while Slovaks do not. And this information comes up year after year. But I cannot answer this question, how to cope with that. I can only remember when I look at all the data, review the report. I am not a sociologist, I am not a data expert, but frequently it seems to me that this belief in disinformation, fake news, etc., is accompanied by no faith in liberal democracy, no faith in the state and its empowerment, and that is frequently also accompanied by distrust to media, mainstream media. I would dare to put forward a thesis that if we try to solve the problems and answer the questions why people do not trust their states in Poland and in Slovakia, why people distrust liberal democracy, why people do not believe in the media, well, I would say there is lots of sin on liberal Democrats, on politicians, on the media. We are all sinful. Everybody knows that. That's frequently discussed in such panels. However, before we solve those essential problems, if ever, then we at the Demagog teach about disinformation. We run workshops starting from seniors, journalists, fact-checking, up to primary school students. It may sound trivial, but the basics is in education, teaching critical thinking, fact-checking at school. And I am now teaching students at a university, and that's surprising. Those young people do know the tools. They can search by pictures, they can check if the picture is true or not, the context it is used in, they understand they should not send links whose origin we do not know, because somebody may take over our money or virus our computers. But what they miss is they do not have this awareness why this news is there, what the message creator wants to tell us, how they are trying to manipulate us, what emotions they are trying to evoke in us, why they are doing this, etc. It seems to me teaching that thing at schools, well, it's my conviction, I have no backup in research,
exactly.
but that might help.
Agree. But I would like to come back to media because, as you said, crucial are independent and strong media. So, Zuzka, what do you think? What is the role of independent reporting, or what is the future of independent media in Slovakia and journalism? In respect to what was said, that also our government is protecting and sharing, promoting alternative media.
I understood only half of what she said, but I will try to elaborate on that. I mean, the one thing is education and schools and critical thinking. What changed in Slovakia is that disinformation and hoaxes are a main political tool right now by governing politicians, right? If we think about the past of Robert Fico, I mean, he used George Soros before against President Kiska, which was in 2018 when the journalist Jan Kuciak was killed, and it didn't help him at all at that time, right? But in recent years, he started to use disinformation in his favor to not truly to people believe that George Soros is governing Slovakia or, having some ties in progressive Slovakia, whatever the bullshit is that he's saying, but to destroy any trust in anything. Like, there is no truth, there is no trust in institution, in politicians, and they are using it. We can see the shift in Slovak politicians because when he used George Soros for the first time, even his colleagues were not playing this game with him along. I mean, they were not commenting on that, or they were denying that George Soros did anything with Andrej Kiska, the former president, right? Now they are playing this game with him as well. A part of it is because of the criminal cases against several members of their party, so they have like common goal to not be persecuted, but they are using this information on daily basis. I do think that we have to I don't have the answer for you, the exact answer, because this is a new thing for us. So we recently have to spend half of our time debunking the stupid things members of parliament say, members of government say, and it's quite exhausting. And I don't know if this is the role of the media, because we could focus on corruption, we can focus on other more important things than reporting if the earth is flat or round, which we spent a week on. We ourselves have to answer this question to ourselves in newsrooms. What should be the effort? Because maybe there are some people, maybe significant number of people that really need to hear that the earth is round. I don't know. Maybe we need to do this reporting. And maybe not. So we have to answer this question to ourselves. But I do follow a lot of the disinformation personas and media. I do this to myself almost daily, I have to say. And I mean, they are struggling a lot because they used to be anti-government, anti-establishment, and now they are establishment and pro-government. And it is very hard to do this if you are because you want to fuel the hatred, you want to fuel the aggression, but if you are in favor of the government, it's harder to do. My guess is that people will get a little bit tired of this, and since the financial situation in Slovakia is getting worse, I mean, people are not that stupid, so at some point it will not work that much, so we will see a shift there. But we still have to answer ourselves the question what we should do, you know, in standard media, what we should cover, what kind of topics we should cover, and focus on. And I don't have the answer yet. We'll see.
Yeah, but there are new projects coming. Also, your husband is coming with some new alternative with independent media, so we will see. And I would very much like to give also the opportunity our audience to ask one question. If anybody has a question, this is now the time, and then I will ask Zora to end this discussion with some promise or suggestion.
Some light at the end of the tunnel.
The recipe of the liberals for Slovakia. So one brief questions, or I see two, so please be concise, and then I would like to ask you for a concise answer. Yeah.
Perfect, thank you. Dominika Kasprowicz. Yesterday I was asked by the Italian colleague, professor in political science, not about how do we Poles manage to turn over the political situation during the last elections, but why it happened that the government that was stepping down actually agreed to step down. So what would be your take on the future of Slovakia in case the election is won by the opposition?
Hi, my name is Eric Boros. Coming from Hungary myself, my question would be, how do you see the role of the Hungarian minority in this polarization in Slovakia? For example, there is right now news circulating in Hungary that there is new legislation in Slovakia that could penalize Hungarian settlements in the south by not using Slovak language in their words. So yeah, and
which
for example,
is true.
Yeah.
Which is true.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So how do you see the role of the Hungarian minority in this entire polarization, and could it lead to maybe possible violence even against Hungarians in the future if the government continues on this way? Thank you.
I mean, we can be quick on the Hungarian minority. Right? It's 10% of Slovakia. It's a lot of votes, we have to say, 9 or 10, yeah. The law is, it's a true information, although it's in preparation. It's not passed on yet. It's crucial, but we can see that Viktor Orbán was funding the minorities in Slovakia for a long time, and he's influencing the minority very much. So they are divided themselves. Half and half, Michal, what would you say? probably. So half of them are in favor of Orbán, half of them are against Orbán. So the polarization you can see also in the Hungarian minority. But for sure, I mean, it's crucial. I mean, we have to say that they are very cautious about the Hungarian minority, not to start to fuel the hatred against the Hungarians. Very cautious about that is the government. Which is a good thing, I would say, because we could see Robert Fico, using the language against Hungarians, Romas. Now it's LGBTQ people, so it's not Hungarians, but it can change tomorrow. I mean, we'll see. Hopefully not. Good luck with that. So it's important, but the minority is divided because Viktor Orbán was financing it for many years.
Yeah, let me just add very briefly. Hungarian card is gone from Slovakia. It doesn't mean that the reconciliation between Slovaks and Hungarians occurred. It's just the result of the fact that the Hungarian coalition at the moment is practically completely in hands of allies of Orbán. And once they will make it into the parliament, which is likely eventually, they will be on the side of Fico and a Slovak semi-fascist and fascist in a parliament. It's very in this way. It's very simple, and all those pro-liberal Hungarians are completely marginalized in Slovakia. So, but the important thing is at least Slovak nationalists are not playing with the Hungarian card anymore.
Yeah, and what was the first question about the government stepping down?
Stepping down, you mean Fico? So Zora, if you could touch upon this question and answer, how do we fight populism, polarization and violence from the perspective of liberals? It's very hard job in 2 minutes, 50-50.
Okay, I am here to solve it again. Well, I'll try to answer the question, but also I'll come back to what I said about Progressive Slovakia being the most successful liberal party. And of course, it has many different reasons, but I think one of them is that Slovakia never had this liberal revolution because we went straight from communism into the economic neoliberalism and Christian conservatism because the leaders of the transformation those who were successful were more economic liberals than cultural liberals. So we probably need our civilization battle for liberal society. It's still ahead of us. And that's why I think, and it's my recipe for Slovakia, but maybe it's also for Europe, because I've been recently to this ALDE Congress in Lisbon, which is the European Liberal Party, and many of the leaders of these liberal parties in Europe were slightly whining about how the liberalism is not sexy anymore and stuff like this. And then there was our chairman who was saying, like, oh, we are very sexy, we are going up in the polls and so on. And I think we need to create a new type of liberal politics for 21st century. And it's very much connected with what you said about reinventing Slovakia, because I think this new liberal or progressive or whatever politics has to be the representation of modern Slovak identity, and it has to invent new liberal narratives. And now I say something which might be a bit controversial, but all the political theorists would say that, okay, liberal politics is over, now the identitarian politics are ruling everything. And I think we have to learn from them a little bit, because not from the methods they use, but from the needs they react to. And there is definitely a need for identity, for belonging, for being part of something big, having an idea you can die for, basically. And I think we actually need to reinvent this for Slovakia, and reinvent it also for people who now look upon Russia more than European Union. And it's easy to say and very difficult to do. But I think what are the tools for it is first the trust building. We didn't discuss the issue of trust, but Slovakia is a trustless society. It's the country where people don't trust to each other, don't trust to institutions. The level of trust in the society is lowest of Europe and maybe in the world, actually. And it has its reasons, but we have to try to build the trust in the society. Difficult, I mean, a long debate how to do that, but we can maybe have another debate for that. And I think the other recipe is to really have a new type of leaders. And the new type of leaders, we have to come back to the leadership where political figures are inspiring for people, so people want to be like them. And we have to abandon the populist narrative about, because what do the populists say to the people? That we are no better than you. And that's the difference. We have to show people the others want to be like them. And actually, I think from 1 year in the parliament that it works a little bit. For example, we have more than half of our club are women. That's the biggest difference you can make in Slovak parliament. Like for some of those guys there, it's for the first time they have to deal with that many women of this kind. And it's already changing the atmosphere. And it's not easy, we know. But it's totally changing because suddenly they know what they are saying is wrong, but they don't know what actually of their sentences was wrong and what was not. So, yeah, I think it's reinventing what the leadership means and reinventing the story of modern Slovak identity, which is the task ahead of us. And then, when this identity is something attractive to people, that would be the reason why Fico will step down, because his story won't be attractive anymore.
Yeah, and letting go the culture wars between conservatives and liberals.
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you very much. On this semi-positive and reason-driven note, I would like to conclude and thank you very much for your precious insights and for your attention. Please have a nice rest of Freedom Games. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jedzą kanapki z kawiorem.
Nadzwyczajna kasa.
Obrażanie dziennikarz telewizji polskiej.
Chodzi o działania polityczne.
Ratowanie ofiar dla pedofilów.
Für Deutschland.
TVP Info. Włącz się na nowo.
Radość, nadzieja, życie, wyzwanie, pasja, pamięć, zaufanie, pokój, jedność. Słowa tworzą świat. Polskie Radio. Źródło wiarygodnych informacji.
Plany biznesowe powstają z marzeń. Dlatego nie ma dwóch takich samych firm. Jedni chcą działać na całym świecie. Innym cały świat mieści się w dłoni. Sukces biznesu to nie tylko jego wielkość, ale też szczęście, jakie przynosi ludziom. PKO Bank Polski.
Uwielbiam szycie w sieci. Wczoraj podszyłem się pod wnuczka, wieczorem uszyłem intrygę na apce randkowej, a dziś planuję grubymi nićmi szyte oszustwo z promocją. Tak się szyje.
Na oszustów są sposoby. Zapoznaj się z poradami ekspertów na niedajsiepodszyć.pl.
It's not always easy to recognize.
It may look like this, or like this. It may be a burden, but it is a responsibility that we embrace nonetheless. But if it means this for one person and this for someone else, maybe it ultimately means being there for one another. It isn't handed to us, but we know where to find it and how it feels, how it tastes, and what it sounds like when we finally have it. It means different things to different people, but for many, it means everything. And if we all fight for it, it will eventually bring us together.
Polskie Radio.
Jedynka.
Rodzina spółek Pelion to 12 000 osób pracujących w ponad 300 spółkach w Polsce, Szwecji, Wielkiej Brytanii i na Litwie. Jesteśmy liderem w branży ochrony zdrowia. Od 1990 roku dbamy o długość i jakość życia. Pracować z nami możesz w jednym z 7 obszarów.
Dziś Nowy Jork, jutro Londyn. Za chwilę Paryż, Warszawa, Berlin. Na całym świecie kultura pulsuje rytmem. Wystarczy tylko włączyć dwójkę. Dwójka, Polskie Radio. Jesteś na miejscu.